We all have moments that we wonder what would have happened if I did something different? What if I went left instead of right? What if I didn't cut Gracie's hair and instead let my friends tease me about liking a girl? Sometimes I wonder what could have happened to me if Gracie had told my mom and dad that I should remain as a girl. What if that moment that I was given to apologize to Grace and tell her that I was wrong happened differently? Hello, welcome to OJ Studios. Please enjoy this special presentation of Punishment Alternative Ending by Olivia Julius. Chapter 26, Gracie's Choice. Dad woke me up before the sun came up. He turned on my room's lights as I slowly came back from whatever dream I had been having. I blinked as a blurry image of my father came into focus. "Get ready for school, Adam," he said sternly. "I'll be taking you." This instantly raised some red flags. Dad didn't normally take me to school. I have always taken the bus to Little Ridge Elementary. I got up and grabbed my uniform out of the closet, but none of them were there. Instead, the girl's black school uniform jumper was there on its hanger. The girly polo was hung next to it, and on my dresser sat a pair of white knee socks and a pair of pink panties neatly folded up. I grabbed the uniform from my bed and walked back into the hallway and into my parents' room. They both looked at me as I raised the uniform up. "What's this?" I asked. "Just put it on," Mom said. "But I thought I was done with my punishment," I said, defeated. I tried to think of how and if I did something wrong. "Just put it on," Dad said, repeating, "Mom, I will explain later." He pointed to the door, and I slowly left the room. I looked at the uniform, trying to imagine what the school day was going to look like with it on. What were my friends going to say? What were they going to do when they meet Amanda? I changed out of the blue panties that I fell asleep in yesterday, to the panties that were laid out next to the uniform. These were even more girly than the ones I had been wearing during the weekend. These had lace around the waistband and the leg holes. Upon looking closer, they were little hearts repeated around the lace trim. I put them on and put them to my waist. I then grabbed the girly red polo. I tried to imagine that the polo was a boy's one, but the puffed and ruffled sleeves and them made it obvious that this was 100% a girly polo. I put my arms through the sleeves and buttoned the 3 buttons around the neckline, ignoring the fact that the little buttons were shaped like flowers. After I put the polo on, I got the jumper and put it over my head, and let it fall to the top of my knees. It felt like every other dress I have worn this weekend, but it felt more weird, or maybe it was because this is the girl's uniform that I have seen every girl wear since I was in kindergarten. Or maybe it's the fact that this is mostly likely what I am going to wear when I introduce everyone to Amanda. I put the white knee socks onto my feet, ignoring the fact that on the sides was little knitted hearts and, on the top, how they had a ruffle. I grabbed the Mary Jane shoes from my shoe shelf because I wasn't an idiot. I knew that Mom and Dad wasn't going to let me wear my normal boy shoes with a girl's uniform. I left my room and walked to the bathroom. I closed the door and looked in the mirror. The girl in the mirror looked like she was ready for school. She looked like nothing was out of the ordinary for her. Just jump on the school bus and enjoy a day at the school. Dad knocked on the bathroom door and I answered it. He looked me up and down approvingly. "Here," he said, handing me 2 Pop-Tart packages. "Eat these in the car, we got to get going." "Dad, I'm still not sure about this," I said. "What did I do wrong? Why am I dressed like a girl still?" "We'll talk about it in the car, let's go," Dad said, putting an arm on my shoulder and guiding me to the garage door. I followed his lead and got into his car. I sat in the front seat while Dad opened the garage door and sat in his seat. Dad started the car and backed slowly out of the driveway. I looked out my window as Dad put the car into drive and started to drive away. Dad turned on the radio and tuned it to a country music station and let it play on low volume. The radio played an old song that I didn't recognize and then went straight to "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," a song by Shania Twain, I laughed a little at the song choice that seemed to be comically linked to this form of punishment. Adam! Dad said once the song ended, and a commercial started to play. Do you remember why your punishment started in the first place? Because I cut Gracie's hair, I said looking down. And because you tormented other girls in your class, Dad said. I know, I said looking at him. And I am sorry, really, I am. Can I please just go to school as a boy? Dad didn't say anything for a whole commercial break. But eventually his hardened exterior broke and he looked at me. It's not our punishment to release you on, he replied. I looked at him for a second and then the realization of the punishment came into focus. It's Gracie's, I said slowly. Dad nodded. We gave Gracie the choice: if you had been good for this weekend, she can either release you from your punishment, or if she feels that you haven't learned your lesson, then you will remain as a girl for the rest of the school year. My blood ran cold. Gracie, a girl, that I had cut her hair, and made her cry, will now be deciding whether I can be a boy at school again. There's another part to your punishment that we will discuss after school, Dad said, but right now your future rests on what Gracie says. This isn't fair, I said, trying to hold back tears. It wasn't fair for Gracie to have her hair chopped off either, Dad retorted. Look, last night I talked to Gracie's parents while I was out grabbing pizza. They will talk to Gracie on your behalf, but just like she has no choice to have her hair shortened, you have no choice whether you wear a jumper or not the rest of the school year. I nodded, not letting Dad see me tear up as I thought about how my social life at school, my bad boy persona, the reputation that I made for myself, was now over. There was no way that Gracie would let me stay a boy. Dad pulled into the school's parking lot. It was still dark outside, and the illumination of the parking lot lights showed that there was no one at the school except for one other car, a red SUV, was parked near the entrance of the school. Dad parked his car in the staff parking lot and got out. I did the same and we both walked to the back of the car to the trunk. Dad opened it and got out the cardboard box that I had put Gracie's clothes in the night before. Dad took the box out and handed it to me to carry. We walked to the doors of the school. I looked over to the SUV, and 3 figures emerged from it and slowly walked over to us. As they got closer, I could see the shortest figure was Gracie. Her now short brown hair laid just below her shoulders, a lot shorter than it was last time I saw her. Once Gracie saw me, she smiled a little bit. Clearly, she saw me dressed in the same uniform as her was funny. This was all her doing and I could tell she was enjoying every moment of it. Behind her was her parents. The dad was bald and very muscular. He is wearing a blue t-shirt that has the sleeves cut off, this way everyone can see the tattoos all around his arms. One of the tattoos that caught my attention was the word Gracie on it, with what I presume is Gracie's birth date on it. Above Gracie's name is another girl's name. The name Jessica was written out with angel wings on either side. Below the name was her birth date, but unlike Gracie's name there was a second date below the first one. The second date was just 4 months ago. I did the math in my head of the 2 years and found that they were only 16 years apart. Gracie's mom wore a business suit. She had on a pair of black slacks and a black dress jacket. She wore a white blouse and left a few buttons undone, showing off her cleavage. Her hair was long and wavy just like Gracie's had been. Wordlessly, Dad opened the front doors of the school and let us all into the school. Dad led the way to the school's office with me following behind everyone. Gracie's dad said something to Gracie, and she turned and looked behind her and saw that I was walking much slower than the group. She nodded to her dad and took a tablet from him. She stopped and waited for me to catch up. "Hi!" she whispered kind of shyly. I could tell that she didn't really want to be talking to me, that while I had been having fun at Aunt Georgia, she had been angry about the loss of her hair. "Hi," I said, unable to think of the proper words to say how sorry I am. Dad said it would be best if we talked alone while they talked in your dad's office. Gracie said she took my hand, and we walked past the office and into the dimly lit cafeteria. In the distance I could hear the cooks making breakfast and talking to themselves in the kitchen. If any of them saw Gracie and I, they would just see 2 girls sitting at a table talking. Gracie found the table that the girls in my class are assigned to during lunch and sat down. I followed her. "Look, Gracie!" I started but Gracie stopped me. "Don't think saying sorry will make this all better," she said, putting the tablet that her dad had handed her on the table. "I'm sorry," I said, "more than you can ever imagine." "Do you know why I had long hair?" she asked. I shrugged my shoulders. "Look, I don't really care. Just please tell my dad that you forgive me so I can get out of this," I said, looking around. The longer that Gracie and I talk, the more nervous I am that someone will see me wearing this. "So, you're not interested in what I'm going to say?" Gracie asked. "I will listen to whatever you tell me once I'm in my normal uniform," I said, folding my arms. Gracie looked at me for a long moment and smiled. "I was hoping you were going to say that," she said with an evil smirk. She got up from the table and started for my dad's office. "Wait!" I yelled before getting up from the table. I didn't mean it. Gracie still walked to my dad's office. I knew what Gracie was going to tell me. I knew that my life as Adam was now over. "Gracie, looks, I can't be stuck wearing this," I said, pulling at the jumper. "I can't, I'll be made fun of." I hoped that Gracie would change her mind, but Gracie continued to head to my father's office. "Shoot!" I whispered. I struggled to keep up with her. We passed Mrs. Yolkman in the hall. She turned around and watched us both practically fast walk to my dad's office. "Ladies, slow down, don't be in such a hurry," she yelled out. I wondered if Mrs. Yolkman had recognized me. Did she know that one of the girls that she just told to slow down was really me? We got to the school's office and Gracie threw open the door. Both of Gracie's parents were sitting in the chairs in front of Dad's desk. They had been talking, but stopped when we entered the room. "So, Gracie, what have you decided?" Dad asked. I looked over at Gracie with another pleading look. At that moment I wish I could control her mind and force her to say that my punishment was done and that I could go back to a boy. He didn't listen to me at all. "Mr. Trinan," Gracie said. "All he cares about is going back to wearing a boy's uniform." Dad looked at me. I could see the surprise in his face. "Well, Adam, you don't have to worry about it anymore," Gracie continued. I looked at her hopeful. Was she going to let me return to being Adam after all? "Plus, please," I whispered. "Mr. Trinan, Amanda deserves to be a girl for the rest of the school year." "No," I said in a little squeak. "Thank you, Gracie," my dad said before turning to me. "Amanda, from now on you are now officially a female student named Amanda here. You will no longer be called Adam. Do you understand?" "But Dad, this isn't fair." I tried to protest, but Dad wasn't having it. I stopped. I knew what the look on his face said. "Yes, sir," I replied in resignation. Tears were forming in my eyes as I thought about what that meant. Everyone was going to meet Amanda. There was nothing that I could do to stop that. Once Gracie and her parents left Dad's office, Dad took me to a conference room where the counselor was working on setting up the school's printer. I was forced to hand over my old ID, the same one that Ria had found after the Easter Princess contest. Dad took the ID and cut it in two with a pair of scissors. As he was doing this, the counselor positioned me in front of the camera. "Smile," she said, sitting in the office chair. I didn't smile, I couldn't. Out of pity, the counselor snapped the photo with me still looking miserable. I looked at my ID as Dad took me to Mrs. Yolkman's room. The name Amanda Marie Trinton was printed on it along with my new picture. I looked at the girl in the photo for a long time. Yesterday the girl volunteered to wear a dress, today the girl is hesitant and scared to see anyone. As I walked down the hallway, I could feel the bottom of the jumper dress uniform sway around my legs. During the weekend I used to like that feeling, but now it just felt as weird to me as my first day. To anyone who didn't know me, Dad just looked like he was escorting a female student down the hallway. However, to anyone that knew me could tell that I wasn't a girl and that I was in fact a boy in the girls' school uniform. "Dad, didn't I do everything you and Mom wanted?" I asked. "I mean, I became a girl for the weekend, I became Easter Princess, I even wore a dress home. Haven't I been punished enough?" Dad stopped in the hallway and bent down so we were eye to eye. I expected him to be angry that I asked, but instead he just looked at me for a second and smiled. "Amanda, what do you think would have been the key to getting off of Gracie's punishment?" Dad asked. I shrugged my shoulders. I don't know. I honestly answered. Dad sighed a little and led me to a bench that was outside Mrs. Yolkman's door. Adam, Gracie wanted you to hear why she had grown out her hair, for you to realize that you had hurt her emotionally when you had cut her hair. She had hoped that making you wear girls' clothes for a few days would have taught you humility. But instead, when you rushed her, she figured out that you didn't learn your lesson. For that I am ashamed of you. I looked up and tried to meet my dad's eyes. The task that Gracie had set out was so simple: just listen to her, apologize, and admit I was wrong. I was so close to being a boy again and I screwed it up. I'm sorry, Dad. I said, my voice cracked a little. I know, he said, but it's too late, Gracie has already chosen, and you must live with that. Dad got up and held his hand to me to take. I took it and slowly got up. Hopefully this makes you a better man when you grow up, Dad said before knocking on Mrs. Yolkman's door. If I ever become a man, I whispered. You will be one day, Dad said, patting me on the shoulder. Dad opened the door. The sound of Mrs. Yolkman's old wary voice filled the hallway. My throat felt dry as I thought about what I was doing. I slowly walked inside the classroom. Mrs. Yolkman looked over at the door to see who had entered her classroom and stopped when she saw me standing there. I looked over to my classmates and they had all stopped writing down notes too and instead looked up and stared at me. In the very back I could see my old seat. Eric also watched me, and when our eyes met, he smirked a little. It was almost like he was trying to hold in his laughter. After all, me wearing a girl's uniform made me extremely a sissy. Then I looked at Gracie. She sat in the front row with her arms crossed, smiling. Her work was done. She had single-handedly made me the biggest sissy in the whole entire school, and now that she had succeeded there was nothing left to do but watch and enjoy. Listen up, Dad called out in a loud booming voice. Everyone in the classroom stopped staring at me and looked over to Dad. This is Amanda, Dad said, putting his hand on my shoulder. Please treat her with respect. I looked around at classmates, all of them I had known since we were in preschool, yet now I was seeing them like it was our first time meeting. Amanda, take your seat, Dad instructed me. I nodded my head and walked slowly to my seat in the back of the class, but Mrs. Yolkman stopped me. Amanda dear, that is no longer your seat, this one is, she said, pointing to a desk that is right in front of her desk. I sighed and walked over to it. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I walked over to it. There were two girls next to where I sat now, Bridget and Jamie. Dad nodded at Mrs. Yolkman and left the room. I was probably the only one that knew that he had left. Everyone else's gaze remained firmly on me. Welcome back, Mrs. Amanda, Mrs. Yolkman said before turning around and continuing her lesson. Slowly my classmates looked away from me and back to Mrs. Yolkman. I shrunk down in my seat a little bit as I looked around a little bit. No one will say anything about me while Mrs. Yolkman is here.